There was a red wine stain on the ceiling. That's the first thing I noticed when I crawled out from behind the couch, hours after the party ended and the lights were off. It wasn't supposed to be a hiding place. I didn't even mean to stay there. But I had gone to get my phone, dropped it, and by the time I bent down to grab it, I heard voices walking in from the kitchen. Hers, and someone else's. So I stayed low. And then I couldn't move. I wasn't supposed to hear any of it. They thought everyone had left. They didn't know I had come back for my charger. They didn't know I had forgotten my own presence. He's harmless, she said, and something about the way she said it made my spine curl. Like a sad little museum piece. He's just there, always apologizing. A man chuckled. Deeper voice. Familiar, but I couldn't place it. Then why stay with him? A pause. I could hear the sound of her sipping wine, swallowing slowly. Honestly, I think I felt sorry for him. That's not a good reason to marry someone, is it? They laughed. Both of them. A soft, muffled kind of laugh. The kind that sticks to your ribs and keeps you awake 10 years later. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. They walked away after a while. Back upstairs. Probably to my bedroom. Our bedroom. I stayed behind the couch. In the dark. With a dead phone and a stomach full of acid. I had planned to surprise her with a trip to the coast. I had booked a tiny seaside cottage with yellow curtains and hand-painted mugs. I had even printed the reservation because she always liked paper things. Said they felt more real. But now, I was just the man behind the couch. When I finally stood up, my knees cracked like branches. The wine stain on the ceiling looked like a splatter from a crime scene. And in a way it was. I left the house without my shoes. Without my wallet. Without the reservation printout. She didn't call. She didn't text. And the next morning, when I returned to pack my things, what I found in the kitchen made everything worse. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It was rehearsed. It was planned. And I was the only one who didn't know. I didn't sleep that night. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying the laughter. Her voice, so familiar and warm, had taken on a sharpness I didn't recognize, like a blade I'd never noticed until it was already inside me. I sat in my car, parked 3 blocks down, watching the sky change colors. From black to navy. Then that pale gray blue that always makes the world feel too quiet. I thought I'd go numb eventually, but instead, I just got colder. Stiffer. Like my insides were congealing around the truth. At 6:12 a.m., I went back. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. I told myself I just needed to grab a few things. My laptop, a change of clothes, the charger I'd originally come back for. But the second I unlocked the front door and stepped into the living room, it was obvious something had shifted. It wasn't just that the house was quiet. It was staged. As if someone had tried to reset the scene. The wine glasses were gone. The couch pillows fluffed. A candle burning on the windowsill, one we hadn't lit in over a year. It smelled like cinnamon and denial. But what really made my hands tremble was the sight of 2 plates in the sink. Both scraped clean. Both hers. She didn't even try to hide it. They'd stayed. Eaten. Slept. In our home. On our sheets. I didn't go upstairs. I couldn't. Instead, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the coffee machine. It was still warm. She had made him coffee. Probably used the mug I got her from that tiny bookstore in Vermont. The one with the little hand-painted fox. She once said it made mornings feel like childhood. I wonder if it felt like that today, too. I found my laptop in the study, shoved into the corner under a pile of unopened mail. My charger was looped neatly beside it, almost mockingly so. I reached for it. And that's when I noticed the envelope. It wasn't sealed. No name on the front. Just placed there, like it wanted to be found. Inside, 3 printed emails. Conversations. Between her and him. I scanned quickly, my hands shaking harder with each line. He won't know. He never notices anything. It's like living with a ghost that thinks it's still alive. This weekend will be easy. He's too passive to ask questions. There were dates. References. Hotel receipts. This wasn't new. It wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't even the beginning. It was a chapter one hadn't been allowed to read until now. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked out, slow and deliberate, like if I moved too fast the house might explode behind me. What broke me wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the lies or the physical cheating. It was the way they wrote about me. Like I wasn't a person. Like I was just a faded character in a play they had outgrown. I wasn't hurt. I was erased. And what happened that evening proved it even more. Because when I tried to disappear quietly, Malin did something I never expected. She called the police, and she told them I was unstable. They showed up at 7:44 p.m. Two officers, one male, one female. Calm but cautious, the way you approach a skittish animal or someone holding a live wire. I was staying at a motel outside town, dusty carpet, flickering hallway light, a place where the vending machine ate your dollar but gave you a soda anyway. I picked it because it was anonymous. Nobody asked questions at places like this. I like that. I heard the knock and froze. For a second, I thought maybe it was her, that she'd come to explain, or cry, or beg me to talk like they do in movies. But when I opened the door and saw the badges, reality hit harder than any fantasy I could have conjured. They asked if I was Elric Dunn. I nodded, barely. My throat felt like sandpaper. They said someone had called in concern for my safety, and possibly theirs. I didn't understand. I hadn't contacted anyone. I hadn't even used my phone. It was still on airplane mode from the night before. I hadn't posted online. I hadn't messaged her. I was hiding, for God's sake. Then they said her name. Malin. She told them I was emotionally volatile. Said she feared I might hurt myself or come back to the house in a disturbed state. She framed it all like a concerned spouse. But I saw through it instantly. This wasn't worry. This was preemptive damage control. I let them inside, even though my room was a disaster. Piles of clothes, a half-eaten sandwich, papers I had scribbled on in circles because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. I was trying to make sense of things. Of her. Of myself. They looked around. Asked if I had weapons. I didn't. Asked if I had thoughts of self-harm. I hesitated too long. The female officer's eyes narrowed just a touch. She softened her voice, tried to talk gently, like she was soothing a cornered dog. It occurred to me right then that if I had broken a little more, just enough to say the wrong thing, they could have taken me in. On a hold. No charges. Just locked me up for evaluation. And Malin would have been free to spin whatever story she wanted. Do you understand how terrifying that is? To realize that someone who once whispered, "I love you," into your ear now sees you as a liability? A loose end? They left after 20 minutes. I played the part. Calm. Cooperative. I even offered them tea, which they declined. I smiled too much. Overcompensated. It felt like high school all over again, trying to convince the teacher I hadn't cheated on the exam. When the door closed behind them, I stood there for a long time. No music. No TV. Just that buzzing sound cheap lights make when you're paying too much attention. I wasn't sure what scared me more, that Malin had painted me as unstable, or that maybe she had a reason to. That's when I realized. I didn't know who else she had talked to. Her parents? Our friends? My own sister? And then it hit me like a freight train. My email. She had access to everything. And when I logged in, what I found there shattered whatever pieces of trust one had left. Because she hadn't just lied to the cops. She had been impersonating me. My email account had been untouched for days. I hadn't thought to check it. I was too buried in the chaos inside my head. But something about the way the officers phrased it, the way they glanced around the room like they were expecting warning signs taped to the walls, made me feel like the narrative about me had already traveled further than I could see. That's what made me open the laptop and log in. And I almost wished I hadn't. There were 3 sent messages I hadn't written, all from the past week. All short, all cold. One was to my boss, well, ex-boss now, saying I'd decided to resign without notice for personal reasons. It thanked him for the opportunity and included a line that sounded like it came from a corporate handbook. The second was to my landlord, terminating the lease early. The third was the one that made my jaw lock. It was addressed to my sister. I need space. Please don't contact me for a while. I'm working through things. Malin knew we were close. She knew my sister was the one person who would come looking if I went silent. She had covered every base, cut every thread. I sat back in the motel chair, fingers curled in my hair, breathing like I'd just run 10 miles. The room felt smaller than it had a minute ago. The bed, the table, even the light fixture, it all seemed warped. Like the world had tilted slightly, just enough to make me lose my balance. I thought maybe she had hacked into my account. But no, that was too crude. She didn't need to. Months ago, when my phone updated, I'd given her the login just in case I ever forgot it. She didn't ask for it. I just offered it. Like a fool. Like a husband. Like someone who thought trust was still a currency that meant something. She had been rewriting my life, one email at a time. Quietly. Efficiently. And the scariest part? She wasn't rushing. She wasn't panicked. It was all methodical, which meant this had been planned. I couldn't sit there anymore. I needed air. I stepped outside, the motel parking lot buzzing with the sound of a vending machine that hadn't worked in years. The air was stale, but at least it wasn't recycled through vents. I walked, aimlessly, until I found myself outside a convenience store. I don't know why I went in. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't thirsty. I think I just didn't want to feel like I was disappearing. I grabbed a bottle of water and stood in line behind a man buying scratch-off tickets and a bottle of mouthwash. The clerk was an older woman with tired eyes and a stack of gossip magazines behind her that hadn't been rotated since spring. When it was my turn, she scanned the bottle, looked up, and smiled gently. Rough night. I blinked. She didn't know anything about me, of course. But something about the question, it cracked something loose inside me. I almost said everything. I almost spilled the entire story right there at the counter. But all I managed was a shaky laugh, and a yeah, something like that. She handed me my change and said, "Take care of yourself. Not everyone's on your side, even when they pretend to be." I froze, just for a second, because those words, they didn't feel random. They felt like a warning. I walked out, heart racing. Paranoia? Maybe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else knew more than they should. That I was walking through a maze she had built months ago, and the walls were only just starting to close in. And when I returned to my motel room and saw what was waiting under the door, a single folded note with my name written in her handwriting, I knew for certain. This wasn't over. She was still playing, and I was still the piece she thought she could move. I stood there staring at the folded piece of paper for almost 2 full minutes before picking it up. Her handwriting, curved, steady, unmistakably hers, was scrawled across the center. Elric. No love, no from. Just my name like it was stamped instead of written. Like it was an address on a package that needed to be delivered, signed, and forgotten. My hands shook as I opened it. I told myself I was ready for anything. A confession, an apology, a threat, maybe even a lie so bold it would burn holes through the paper. But when I unfolded it, I found something worse than all of those. There was nothing inside. Blank. Not a word. No message. No drawing. Just a perfectly clean white square with a single hairline crease down the center. The kind of silence that screams. It was a message written in absence. And somehow, it said more than ink ever could. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding it like evidence, like it might disappear if I let go. Was it a mistake? Did she forget to write it? No. Malin didn't make mistakes like that. If she'd meant to say something, she would have. If she wanted to scare me, she could have. If she wanted me to think I was losing my mind, then it clicked. She was doing exactly what she wanted. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was psychological warfare. Subtle, controlled, precise. She wasn't chasing me down with fury or rage. She was unspooling me, strand by strand, until I wouldn't even know which way was up. And the terrifying part was, it was working. I crumpled the paper and tossed it at the trash can, missing by a few inches. It lay there on the floor like a ghost I couldn't get rid of. That's when I remembered the motel had cameras. I ran to the front desk, pretending to be casual, but my voice was an octave too high when I asked, "Hey, quick question. Do your hallway cameras work?" The man at the desk was young, probably just covering night shift to afford textbooks or bad decisions. He raised an eyebrow. "They record, yeah? Why?" I lied badly. "I think I left something out front, and it's gone. Just wanted to see if anyone walked by." He didn't buy it, but he shrugged and said the feed was reviewed every 24 hours, then overwritten unless flagged. I leaned in. "Could you check the last couple hours? Someone might have slid something under my door." He hesitated, then finally nodded and disappeared into the office behind the counter. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I was just about to walk away when he came back out, pale and blinking like he'd seen something he didn't expect. "There's nothing," he said. "No one stopped at your door. No one even walked past that hallway after 4:30. I checked the time. It was nearly midnight. I felt my chest hollow. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Positive." I left. Quietly. Politely. But inside, I was unraveling. Because that meant either he was lying, or I was imagining things. Or worse, someone had been inside the motel. I sprinted back to my room. Key ready, ears straining for sounds on the other side. I unlocked it slowly, pushed the door open. And nothing. No sign of anyone. No forced entry. No note. Nothing moved. Except the lamp by the bed. The one I always left facing the wall because the light was too harsh. Now it was pointed toward the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, and taped to the bottom corner of the mirror was a single post-it. No handwriting, just a printed quote, like one of those fake motivational stickers from an office desk. The only way out is through. I stared at it, heart punching through my ribs. Malin hadn't followed me. She had been ahead of me the entire time. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept the light on, not because I was scared of the dark, but because I was scared of what I might see in it. Every shadow on the wall looked like it had legs. Every breeze through the cracked window sounded like someone breathing. I sat in the corner chair, knees tucked, eyes locked on that sticky note. I couldn't bring myself to peel it off. It felt like a trap, like removing it would trigger the next step in a plan I was never meant to survive. I kept hearing her voice in my head. Not the real one, but the voice I used to trust. The one that used to whisper, "It's okay. I'm here." Now, that voice said nothing comforting. Now, it repeated a single line. "She's already thought of this." The next morning, I packed up and left the motel. I didn't tell the front desk. I didn't check out. I left cash on the nightstand and walked out without looking back. I took the note with me, folded it neatly, stuck it in my pocket like it meant something. Like maybe, one day, I'd show someone and they'd believe me. I didn't go home. I didn't even go back to town. I went to the storage unit. Malin had one I wasn't supposed to know about. I found it by accident. Once, months ago, when she left her purse on the counter and I knocked it over reaching for my keys. The receipt fluttered out like a feather. A small, monthly charge to WKS mini storage. I'd asked her about it. She said it was for some of her old college stuff. Junk, she called it. Just a bunch of boxes I haven't sorted through. I believed her. Like a fool. But I remembered the unit number. I remembered the key fob she always kept clipped to her makeup bag. And now I was standing in front of Unit 112B, palms sweating as I unlocked it, waiting for something awful. Something final. What I found wasn't final. It was unfinished. There was a desk, a chair, a corkboard full of pinned notes, photos, dates, maps. Red string. Actual red string. It looked like one of those conspiracy boards you see in crime shows. Only this wasn't about government secrets or serial killers. It was about me. Photos I didn't remember being taken. Me at the grocery store, walking to the car, sitting on a bench outside the pharmacy, looking at my phone. One of me sleeping in my car. Another of me leaving my sister's house last Christmas. Dozens. All time-stamped. All labeled. Some notes were written in her handwriting. Others weren't. There were other names too. Crossed out. Connected. Labeled with vague terms like reactive, compliant, unstable, neutralized. I felt bile crawl up my throat. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was surveillance. I pulled out my phone and took photos of everything, every wall, every paper. My hands shook so bad most of the pictures came out blurry, but I didn't care. I needed proof. Something real. Something undeniable. Then I saw the laptop. Closed, sitting neatly on the desk, charger wrapped around it like it was waiting for me. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I needed air first. I needed to breathe before whatever was on that screen took the last piece of me. I stepped outside the unit, leaned against the wall, and tried not to throw up. I didn't want to believe it, but every part of me screamed the same truth. This wasn't about love, or even cheating. This was something else. Malin had been studying me, documenting me, and whoever she was working with, or working for, they weren't just interested in breaking a marriage. They wanted something far bigger. I went back inside, grabbed the laptop, and opened the lid. It was already on, and the screen displayed a countdown. 11 minutes and 42 seconds. Then 11 minutes and 41 seconds. No context. No labels. Just time. Ticking down. And whatever was coming when it hit 0, I knew one thing for sure. It wasn't going to be a coincidence. I don't know what I expected to happen when the timer hit 0. A message? A video? Something loud, explosive, final? But when it ended, there was no flash, no sound. Just a single flicker of the screen, and then a login prompt. Username and password. Simple. Empty. Deceptively normal. The countdown hadn't been for a detonation. It had been for access. Malin wanted someone to see what was inside. Maybe me. Maybe not. But whoever she'd built this for, the message was clear. This wasn't meant to be hidden forever. My hands hovered above the keyboard. I didn't have a password. I tried her birthday. Wrong. Our wedding date. Still wrong. Then I typed the one thing that kept echoing in my mind since this started, that quote from the sticky note. The only way out is through. The screen blinked once. Then it opened. A folder appeared instantly. Profiles. Inside were subfolders, dozens of them, labeled with names I didn't recognize. Some had photos. Others had scanned documents, transcripts, PDFs, audio files. Each one read like a psychological dossier. Routines, weaknesses, interpersonal connections, trigger words. And then I saw my name. I clicked it. Inside, over 200 files. A timeline of my life more detailed than even I could remember. Notes about arguments we had. Days I'd forgotten, anniversaries. Emails I never sent. Photos from therapy appointments. There was a scanned copy of the journal I kept in college. I didn't even know she had ever read it. I'd locked it in a trunk. Malin had found a way in. She always found a way in. There were summaries. Cold, clinical analysis of my behavior. Paragraphs that read like evaluations. Subject exhibits obsessive loyalty but lacks assertiveness. Emotional response to rejection trends toward withdrawal rather than aggression. Ideal for prolonged observation due to high tolerance for uncertainty and low confrontation threshold. What the hell was this? It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It wasn't just manipulation. It was data collection. There was a final file. One that was newer than the others. It was labeled simply, Closure_Tier 2. I hesitated. The word closure sounded so absurd now. Like a cruel joke. But I clicked it. A video opened. Grainy. Surveillance quality. A dark room. A figure sitting in a chair, arms tied, head bowed. For a second I thought it was staged. Some kind of dramatization. Until the man lifted his head. It was me. Not current me. A version of me from months ago, when I had that breakdown, when I'd locked myself in the basement for hours because I couldn't face another failure. I thought no one had seen me. I thought I was alone. Malin had filmed it. I don't remember what I said in the footage. I just remember watching myself talk like I was dissolving. Rambling, muttering things like, I don't think she loves me anymore, and maybe if I just disappear. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was shattering. She hadn't just captured my lowest moment. She had archived it. The video cut to black. Then a voice, not Malin's, spoke softly. Subject 19 shows signs of psychological collapse within acceptable margins. Phase 2 recommended. Flagged for transition. The screen froze. That's when I heard a noise behind me. I spun, heart trying to burst out of my chest, but the storage unit was still empty. At least, it looked empty. I stood slowly, blood screaming through my ears, and backed toward the door. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I'd forgotten I even had it on me. I pulled it out and saw a new text. No contact name. No number. Just a single message. You were never supposed to open that file. I dropped the laptop. Not intentionally. My hand just stopped working. I stared at the screen, cracked but still glowing. The folder began closing itself. Files disappearing one by one, faster than I could stop them. Then the screen went black entirely. I grabbed the device, ran out of the unit, and slammed it shut behind me. I didn't bother locking it. What was the point? The sun was just starting to set, casting a burnt orange line across the pavement. I got into my car, locked the doors, and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in my life. Malin hadn't ruined me out of spite. She had selected me. And now, whatever experiment she had started was over. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't drive home. I didn't even know where home was anymore. My apartment? A storage unit full of lies? The motel with a mirror that stared too long? None of it felt like mine. So I drove west. I didn't check the map. I just followed the sun until it dipped low enough to tell me I was somewhere new. I stopped in a town that didn't have a name I recognized. Just a diner, a hardware store, and a gas station that sold keychains shaped like flamingos. I sat in the diner, ordered coffee I didn't want, and stared out the window for hours while the waitress brought me refills without asking. She didn't care who I was. That was the best part. I was just another guy with dark circles and nothing to say. Eventually, I took out the laptop, still cracked from the fall. It wouldn't turn on. Dead. Or wiped. Maybe both. I didn't try to fix it. Instead, I opened my phone. There was a new email. This time, it had a sender. A name I didn't recognize, Lark Systems. But the subject line stopped my heart cold. Your file has been removed. You are clear. I almost didn't open it. But I did. Inside was a simple paragraph. You were never the target. You were the control. Your resilience helped us identify failure points in emotional testing. We apologize for the unintended trauma. The subject has been extracted. You are not being monitored. You may begin again. No signature. No link. Just that. I sat there stunned. Not angry. Not relieved. Just stunned. I didn't understand all of it, but one part was crystal clear. I had been chosen not because I was weak, but because I could endure. Because I wouldn't fight back. Because I'd survived long enough to be useful. But they had underestimated something. They thought surviving would be enough for me. It wasn't. That night, I rented a room above the hardware store. It had peeling wallpaper and a window that faced nothing but a tree. I slept for 14 hours. No nightmares. No ticking clocks. Just silence. The good kind this time. Over the next few weeks, I started writing again. Not code. Not emails. Just thoughts. Pages and pages of things I hadn't let myself say out loud in years. I started to remember the version of myself before Malin. Before the tracking. Before I became a test subject in my own life. And then, something small and strange happened. I smiled. It was quiet. Barely there. But it felt real. I found a job at a bookstore a few towns over. The owner liked that I didn't talk much. I liked that nobody asked questions. Every day, I organized shelves, made coffee in the back room, and learned the names of the regulars. One woman came in every Tuesday and asked for poetry recommendations. Her name was Leah. She had ink on her fingers and once gave me a bookmark she made from dried leaves. Last Tuesday, I asked if she wanted to get coffee somewhere that wasn't surrounded by novels. She said yes. She didn't ask about my past. I didn't offer it. But I'll tell her eventually. Because the truth is, I'm still healing. But I'm not broken. I wasn't the experiment. I was the one who walked out of it.